Hey teachers, Brother Judd here with a teaching tip for this week. The skill that I'd like to focus on is seeing learners the way that God sees them. Now, you may be thinking, is that really a skill? It's more like a characteristic. Well, sure, a lot of these skills are things that once, internalized, it's a characteristic, or it may be something that we naturally feel, but we don't necessarily know how to bring into application in our classes. So in our Teaching in the Savior's Way handbook, there's this skill, see learners the way God sees them. And if you come down to define, it defines this skill in this way. Every student comes to class with different life experiences and relationships that shape the way they think and feel about gospel truths. These views create a starting point, often called a premise, for an individual's thinking. Identifying an individual's premise can help us teach truth with empathy and love as Jesus Christ does. Now, here's the part where sometimes we as teachers struggle a bit, at least in the teachers that I've watched. Different premises do not change the doctrine. Rather, they allow us to see another person's perspective in a way that helps increase our understanding of each learner's need to, in turn, increase faith in Jesus Christ. Okay, so what does that actually look like? It says here that during lesson preparation, teachers can consider the eternal truths as they pause, reflect, and answer the following questions. How might the experiences and relationships of my students shape the way they think, feel about, and live these truths? Or, as we study this truth, could any of my students feel excluded, troubled, or hurt because of these circumstances? It's this second question that I reflect a lot on as I teach my institute classes in Chicago. We have a lot of people who come to the city to get away from family and faith. And they'll, reconnect with Latter-day Saint friends in the city, and the students, kind of as a gateway back to church, will say, hey, why don't you just come check out Institute? It's not all the way going back to church, but just come check Institute out. And so I often try to think about, how could any of my students feel excluded, troubled, or hurt because of their circumstances when we're talking about church things? Because let's be honest, there's a reason that people don't talk about church and politics and polite company, is because talking about those things has an effect of kind of exposing some of our innermost feelings and our core truths that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And people aren't always willing to just bring those up and say, hey, I think this way because of this experience, or because of this deep-seated idea that I have. We don't share those easily. It takes a very mature relationship to bring those things out. So how could you bring those things out? Well, here in this lesson, Luke chapter 9, we have, the lesson is entitled Disciples of Jesus Christ. And the whole purpose of the lesson is talking about what it means to be a disciple of Christ. Possible learning activities, have people do some different exercises, I guess making the analogy that it's by doing exercises that you can become something, or you play follow the leader, and to be a disciple just means that you follow a leader. Not the part I want to focus on. The majority of this lesson revolves around this chart here, this handout, where you have students going through three kind of activities of what it might mean to become a better disciple of Jesus Christ. And so those three things are take up your cross, lose your life to save it, and overcoming distractions and excuses. Okay, so those are the three. How could a student, in discussing these three things, taking up a cross, losing your life to save it, or overcoming distractions and excuses, what experiences or background history or thoughts and beliefs about themselves could possibly make discussing those three things difficult? Not going to tackle all of them, maybe just two real quick. So Luke chapter 9 verse 23 talks about taking up your cross. Here's the verse. And he said to them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. Well, for a student who comes to class with the premise of faith, they're right on board with that. What about a student who does not come with the premise of wanting to be a better disciple of Jesus Christ? What if their premise for coming to seminary is, I just want to get my mom and dad off my back? Well, maybe we could ask the questions this way. And notice how, at least I think, the answer is the same to both questions. But the second question I'm going to offer creates some room for a student who may not come with the premise of faith to feel more included. So maybe I'd do it this way. All right, class, I want you to grab your scriptures, open up to Luke chapter 9, verse 23. And as we read this, I want you to look for, what does this verse teach about being a true disciple of Jesus Christ? Or another way of looking at it is, what sounds hard, or what might be difficult in even wanting to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? And then we read the verse. Do you see there how even just asking that question in a second way, we're not injecting doubt or creating room for doubt. I think we're just addressing, hey, sometimes this is going to be hard. And to acknowledge that on the front end often helps students who may not come with that premise of faith. They're like, oh, I can answer that one because, yeah, this is hard. And notice the answer, it's the same for both questions. Let's go look at another one. The one about avoiding distractions. Okay, so avoiding distractions and excuses. I'm not going to read this whole one, but let's say, even a student sees this one where they're like, oh, avoiding distractions and excuses, and they have a mental health struggle where they've been diagnosed with ADHD or something, and they're like, I can't overcome distractions. How could you, and I'm not going to do this one for you, but how could you ask the questions with regards to, introducing these verses? How could you ask the questions or engage with this quote from President Hunter? How could you engage this overcoming distractions and excuses in a way that somebody who may be dealing with some distractions and excuses could feel more included in the conversation? So again, to see learners the way that God sees them, yes, it's a characteristic, but it's also a learnable skill if you'll just slow down, question some of your own assumptions and premises about the way you see the lesson and the gospel, and then try to slow yourself down a bit and see, okay, this is the direction I'm coming at it from. As a teacher, how can I see my students the way God sees them and see these topics from the way that they might see them? And I think that'll help you engage these hard-to-reach students in a better way. So thanks for participating in this training, and we'll have another one for you next week. Take care.